This comedic gem, which is certainly not for the faint of heart, officially aired between August of 2003 and December of 2010, the series consisting of 6 seasons and 86 episodes. The premiere season aired on CBC television, while the remainder of the series, which is less so tame, more so explicit, aired on Showcase and briefly Comedy Central. Each episode presents this pair of pals who face off in a 1v1 competition, the loser having to participate in a humiliation decided on by the winner. Spencer Nolan Rice, whose signature I personally acquired back in 2015, is funny as He's nerdy and neurotic, possessing an actual moral compass, whilst Kenneth Joel Hotz, the yang to Spenny's yin, is hysterically nefarious and perpetually prone to cheating. When I was admittedly far younger than I should have been, I was introduced to KVS via a Season 2 DVD that I've owned now for nearly 2 decades. My most watched episode is 201, Who Can Drink More Beer. It's consistently funny, featuring an appearance from Hot's crony Dr. Goldfield, as well as a clever scheme, as unknowingly to Spenny, Kenny is guzzling non-alcoholic beer throughout the entirety of the competition. 205, Who Can Dance the Longest, features another clever Hot scam. He essentially tricks Spencer in regard to the competition's start time, so that the match officially commences once an exhausted Spenny is on the verge of collapse, while Kenny is feeling fresh and rested. Season 2, Episode 11 is entitled First to Be Mean Loses. It presents a more subtle long game maneuver from Kenny, whose basic plot is to passive-aggressively toe the line between nice and nasty, with the hopes that Spenny would ultimately snap and become incontrovertibly mean. I should also mention Who Can Sell More Bibles as a sophomore season highlight, the piece giving us a deep dive into an old, rather cringeworthy family adventure script of Spenny's, entitled Hubert the Hoppopotamus. The 3rd season is my favorite of the series, consisting of the show's 2 strongest episodes, Who Can Imitate the Other Guy Better and First to Laugh Loses. The former features a particularly brilliant plan from Mr. Hotz. Instead of Kenneth simply attempting his best Spenny impression, he commits to this hilariously exaggerated impersonation with the intention of infuriating Mr. Rice to the point where he is forced to break character, consistently so. The latter features a number of classic moments, Spenny stoically stating that he hasn't experienced a genuine belly laugh since 1987 has always killed me. Plus, there's the scene in which Spencer deliberately decorates his wall with depressing historical photos in order to keep his face straight, as well as the hysterically goofy performance nearing the episode's end from the boys' mutual friend Bobby. Who Can Keep a Dead Octopus on Their Head the Longest is this wild, LSD-filled episode. It's super wacky and enjoyable, as is Who Can Win a 10-Mile Race, in which Kenny attempts to distract Spencer from the competition with the fake reveal that his mother Toffee has passed away. Then there's Who Can Stay in a Haunted House the Longest. It is such a blast watching Kenny try to scare the shit out of a spiritual and superstitious Spenny. Seasons 4 and 5 are shortened, consisting of 10 episodes apiece, though they each contain their own respective comedy gems. Episode 402 is entitled Who Can Blow the Biggest Fart. It is beautifully immature, though I must admit, flatulence has always been able to tickle my funny bone. Episode 404 is called Who Can Eat More Meat. Kenny kills me in this episode with how utterly vile he is. The 5th season contains such solid episodes as Who Can Wear a Gorilla Suit the Longest, and the gross but hysterical Who Can Keep a Dump in Their Pants the Longest. The gorilla-centric episode features a couple blatant tactics from Ken, as he locks a furry Spencer in a sauna until he's passed out, before ultimately lighting the suit on fire in order to force Spenny out of it. The dump-centric episode features Dr. Goldfield unknowingly assisting his boss Kenny in his switcheroo scam, which, unknowingly to Spencer, gets laxatives into his hands and into his system. I also adore the ridiculous First to Touch the Ground Loses. It's filled to the brim with funny bits. Kenny tells a hilarious story about Spenny's sexual past. We're also introduced to Kenny's brief sidekick, Ryan, who is a loaf of bread wearing googly eyes, whom Kenny holds as he rolls about in a wheelchair. As I've mentioned, the 3rd season would have to be my personal favorite of the series. That is followed by Season 2, then Season 5, then Season 4, which is followed by Season 6, then lastly the CBC broadcasted Season 1. Though the 6th season is definitely closer to the enjoyment level that I experienced with Season 4 rather than the more PG network residing training ground that is the premiere season, which still definitely definitely has its moments. The show's final season contains a trio of underrated gems. The first of this trio is entitled Who Can 69 the Longest? This episode is extremely silly, consisting of Spencer and Kenneth spitting on and biting one another's legs. It's great fun nearing episode's end, witnessing the crew blast the pair with a fire hose in order to spice up the competition. Who Can Put on the Best Play is a segment I've always found to be underrated. Kenny performs a hilarious musical number dressed as a felonious feline, while the presentation of his one-man show is preposterous and hysterically offensive. Spenny's production is unintentionally humorous. It consists of something like 14 acts, and it's so up its own ass in a brilliantly funny way. The bonus episode, Who's the Bigger Idiot, is goofy and ridiculous. Funnily, Spenny's dopey performance throughout this episode bears a striking resemblance to his performance as Kenny in the Who Can Imitate the Other Guy Better episode. Now, in regard to the aforementioned humiliations, the majority of them are a bit too much for my stomach to handle, as they often deal in jackass-level gross-out humor, but thankfully they only take up the last minute or two of a given episode, though I do have a small collection of favorites. For example, the one in which Spencer is forced to eat sushi off of Kenny's ass cheeks. That has always made me chuckle, though my favorite of them all comes fittingly at the end of the show's greatest episode, the classic bit when Kenny feeds Spenny often offensive lines through an earpiece to spout off to strangers hanging about. It's goddamn great. Now, at times when the series is mentioned, the question, is it real, comes up. Well, that's sort of a simple question with a rather complex answer. When anyone is put on camera as themselves, there's going to be this inherent exaggeration of one's personality and enhancement of their characterization, especially after talking to Spencer for a few minutes after a small show in my hometown years ago. My opinion is that Spenny is nerdy and neurotic, and Kenny is more so shot out of a cannon and deliberately vile and a trickster. But in this series, those traits are cranked up to 300%. Again, I just think that when on camera, at least slight hyperbole is instinctual. Now, in regard to the episodes themselves, so much of the content is undeniably real, including probably 100% of the gross out stuff. Now, there definitely are certain plot conveniences at times and sporadic bits that are probably slightly set up, but one must remember that this is a television show, and a television show, at least back then, demands a certain amount of material that covers a specific weekly duration. Each episode must contain momentum, propelling us from scene to scene in a relatively structured, formula-driven fashion, and understanding and accepting that fact allows me to just enjoy the episode and be engrossed in a given episode's competition, rather than sitting there with my arms crossed in nitpick mode. Kenny vs. Spenny is simply funny, and no matter the specificities and technicalities, funny is funny.